Welcome to Social Media Trainwrecks, the Friday show where Clark Edwards and I roll up on the week's biggest brand disaster and pick through the wreckage. I'm Giovanni Gallucci. We find the dumb decision, the post that poured gas on the fire, and the one move that would have saved them. Clark, what are we rubbernecking at this week?
Grab a napkin, Gio. This one's sticky. We're doing Pepsi. And not the soda, the sentence. One line of copy that turned a cherry cola into a national argument about consent.
A cherry cola. That's the beauty of this show. You don't need a data breach or a CEO meltdown to light a 5-alarm brand fire. Sometimes it's 11 words in a scheduled post. Walk me into it.
So here's the wreck. Monday, July 6th, Pepsi posts on Threads. The line was, quote, Pepsi Wild Cherry is what happens when regular cherry stops asking permission.
Read that back slow. Stops asking permission. They were reaching for rebellious. The bad boy cherry, the flavor that doesn't play nice. What landed was a joke about consent, and once a reader hears it that way, they can't unhear it.
So was it the word permission that did the damage?
It's permission sitting right next to stops asking. Each of those words alone is nothing. Together they're a phrase our whole culture already reserves for one very specific, very ugly thing. Pepsi didn't invent that association. They just walked their brand into it wearing a cherry costume.
How does a company that size let that out the door?
Because somebody fell in love with the edge, and nobody read it in the worst possible light. That's the bonehead move, Clark, and it's the whole lesson. Every edgy line has two readings, the one the copywriter intended, and the one a stranger who's had a rough week will hand it. Your job is to check both before you post, not after.
I'm guessing they only checked the fun one.
They check the one that got a laugh in the room. And rooms are dangerous. 6 people who already share the joke will greenlight a line that a million strangers read cold and flat. The conference room is the most flattering mirror a brand owns. It only shows you the version of your post where everybody already likes you.
So the edge itself isn't the crime here.
The edge is the whole business. Wild Cherry is supposed to have some swagger, and if they'd asked me, I'd have pushed them towards swagger. The crime is swagger without a second read. You can be the rebellious flavor without borrowing the exact phrasing of the worst thing one person can do to another. There were 100 ways to say, doesn't wait, doesn't ask, breaks the rules. They grabbed the one with a landmine buried in it.
And you're telling me the fix was small.
The fix was one verb. Wild Cherry is what happens when regular cherry stops playing nice. Same attitude, zero landmine. That's the maddening part of nearly every wreck we cover. The save was one word away, and there was nobody standing in the room to say it out loud.
And this was a scheduled post, wasn't it? Not somebody typing live at midnight.
Almost certainly teed up days earlier, and that makes it worse, not better. A scheduled post is a decision you made in the past that fires whether or not anybody's paying attention. The review has to happen before it enters the queue, because once it's scheduled, the default is that it goes out. Nobody rereads the calendar Monday morning with fresh eyes. The line you approved half asleep on Thursday publishes itself while you're pouring coffee.
Why does the food and drink crowd keep stepping on this rake?
Because flavor brands live on personality, and personality means flirting with the edge every single day. That's fine. That's the job. But the closer you work to the edge, the more you need a guardrail, not less. Pepsi ran a 100-mile-an-hour voice with a 10-mile-an-hour break. When you talk bold for a living, your review process has to be just as bold about killing the ones that cross the line.
Okay, the internet finds it. Screenshots everywhere, millions of views even after it's gone. What does Pepsi actually do?
They deleted the post and put out an apology the next day, July 7th. The line was, "Our recent Wild Cherry post landed in a way we never intended. We hear you, we're sorry," and the post has been deleted. Short, fast, no hostage video paragraph, graded a B.
A B? That sounds like they ran the playbook.
The mechanics were right. Speed was right. They didn't let it sit and rot for 4 days. No, we're sorry if anyone was offended, which is the apology that isn't one. They took it down and said the plain thing quickly. That's a passing grade, and most brands flunk this exact test.
So what cost them the A?
Landed in a way we never intended is doing a lot of quiet hiding. It gently tells on the audience. It suggests the words were fine and you just took them wrong. An A apology owns the copy, not the reception.
What would owning it have sounded like?
Something like, we wrote a line that made light of something serious. That's on us. We've taken it down. Name the actual miss out loud. Pepsi walked right up to that and flinched at the last second. They apologized for how it landed instead of what they wrote.
Does that little bit of hedging really matter once the post's deleted?
It matters because the apology is content too. People screenshot the sorry the same way they screenshot the sin. A clean apology closes the loop, and the story dies by dinner. A hedged one leaves a loose thread, and now you've got a second-day story about your dodgy non-apology stacked on top of the first-day story about the post.
The replies were split, though. A bunch of people defended the line.
They did, and that's the trap sitting right there. Half the comments said you're overreacting, it's about rebellion, lighten up. And when a brand sees defenders show up, the temptation is to plant a flag and tough it out.
Which you're saying was the wrong instinct.
Dead wrong for this one. You don't grade the offense by your loudest fans. You grade it by whether the ugly reading is reasonable and easy to reach. This one was a 2-second trip for a normal person. Pepsi read that correctly and folded fast. And folding fast was the right call. The only thing they left on the table was the confession.
What should that first hour have looked like?
Quiet and quick. You don't argue in the replies. You don't screenshot your defenders. You don't explain the joke. Explaining a joke to an angry room is how you turn one bad post into a 3-day thread. You pull it, you say the plain sorry, and then you go quiet and let the story starve. Pepsi mostly did that. The feeding frenzy only happens when a brand tries to win the argument.
So, if I'm running social for any brand, how do I make sure I'm not you next Friday? Where does this thing get stopped?
3 habits, and none of them cost a dime. First one, the worst light read. Before any post with an edge goes out, one person reads it out loud in the least charitable voice in the building. Not does this land, but how could a stranger weaponize this? If there's an ugly reading a normal person reaches in 2 seconds, you rewrite. 10 seconds of pessimism kills the whole wreck.
Who does that read? The person who wrote it?
Never the author. That's the second habit. The one who wrote the clever line is the worst possible judge of it. They're too in love with it to see the landmine underneath. You need a fresh set of eyes that had nothing to do with the joke.
Sounds like a lot of process for a small shop.
It's not a committee, Clark. It's one skeptic who's allowed to say no. A 2-person company can do this before lunch. It's just the other person reading the line back in a mean voice before anybody hits post. The brands that eat it in public didn't lack budget. They lacked one honest naysayer with veto power.
And the third habit?
Decide your delete versus defend rule before you're bleeding. On a calm Tuesday, you write the line down. If a reasonable person can read the post as making light of assault, abuse, a tragedy, or a protected group, it comes down. No debate, no waiting to see if it blows over.
And if it's just people being cranky?
Then you can hold. Cranky about your opinion is survivable. Sometimes it's even the point. But you decide which bucket you're in using a rule you wrote when your head was clear, not in the middle of the fire with your heart pounding. Pepsi got to delete in a day. With the rule already written, they'd have gotten there in an hour. And the gap between an hour and a day is the whole difference between a blip and a trend.
Is there ever a case where you leave a bad post up?
Sure, if it's just an unpopular opinion or a typo, leaving it up is fine, even honest. Deleting every little thing makes you look skittish and guilty. But the rule is narrow. Tasteless about something serious comes down. Unpopular but defensible can stay. Knowing that difference in advance is most of the job.
Give me the one that travels. The lesson for a brand that'll never sell a cherry cola.
Protect the trust because it's the only asset you can't rebuy. Pepsi can eat a bad day. They've got the biggest budget in the room. What every smaller brand is actually guarding is the benefit of the doubt. That's the thing that lets your next 10 posts land as playful instead of suspect.
Put that in terms a restaurant or a shop owner feels.
Every business has its wild cherry moment waiting. The barbecue joint with the cheeky sign, the boutique with the flirty caption. The edge is what makes you memorable. So I'm never telling you to go bland. I'm telling you the sharper your voice, the more you need one person whose only job is to picture the meanest reader in Texas and ask what they'd screenshot.
So the real cost isn't the deleted post.
The deleted post is nothing. The cost is that for a week, your brand's name sits in a headline next to the word consent, and every customer's mental picture of you shifts a quarter inch. You spend that trust down with one lazy line, and now every joke you make gets read by a jury instead of a fan.
And that adds up.
It always adds up. You don't lose an audience in one wreck. You lose it in the erosion, a quarter inch at a time, until one day you're the brand nobody trusts to be clever in public. That's a slow death. And it starts with somebody protecting a punchline instead of the trust.
Index card version for the small operator.
Read it in the worst light, let somebody who didn't write it kill it, and know in advance what comes down without a meeting. 3 habits, no budget, this afternoon. Every brand we bury on this show had the money. What they didn't have was the one skeptic and the 10 seconds. So that's the wreck. A cherry cola reaching for cool, 11 words that borrowed the wrong association, and a fast, slightly shy apology that stopped the bleed without quite owning the cut. None of it was the flavor. All of it was the sentence, and the empty chair where a skeptic should have been sitting.
Same lesson as always. You rarely get to pick the wreck.
You always get to pick whether it leaves the station. Read it mean, let somebody else pull the brake, and decide what comes down before the fire ever starts. Do those 3, and most of these never happen. I'm Giovanni Gallucci.
And I'm Clark Edwards.
We'll see you next Friday on Social Media Trainwrecks.